From San Francisco, it's Grumpy Old Doc with Dr. Gene Bede.
Hello, this is Dr. Gene Bede, and welcome to the Grumpy Old Doc. I'm in the studio today with my co-host, Lulu. We've talked about drug companies and PBMs quite a bit, and how their bad behavior has contributed to some of the things that are broken in our healthcare system. We haven't even gotten started on hospitals, some of which truly misbehave, or my colleagues, doctors in the medical profession, despite the fact that most of us are hardworking, honest, professional, intelligent, dedicated individuals. There's some bad behavior in the medical profession that has resulted in things being broken in healthcare as well. There's a lot of things broken in healthcare, folks. A lot of people out there who broke them. A lot of people out there who refuse to admit that their piece of it is broken. Look no further than the insurance companies, who have certainly contributed to the problem, if not created some of the problems that we see. And yet, can they really solve the problems of health that are important to us? I don't think so. As important as modern medicine is, even people who are chronically ill spend most of their time outside the hospital, outside the doctor's office, outside the dialysis center. They spend their time living, walking, eating, sleeping, watching the television, socializing, whatever the things may be. I have asked this question many times. Groups of executives, doctors, hospital administrators, health plan managers. How many folks think that the health problems that we currently face, diseases like type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart disease, are likely to be solved by nicer hospitals, better surgeries? Not very many people raise their hands. When I get to pharmaceuticals, better drugs, quite a few people raise their hands. When I ask about lifestyle, exercise, diet, etc., almost everybody raises their hand. But the sad truth is, lifestyle doesn't sell. And that's why the drug companies do so well. They don't have to worry about competing against lifestyle, folks. So I thought I'd take a moment to talk about a few of the things that I think are most important when it comes to lifestyle. And when I say a few of those things, 6 things, half a dozen things to remember about your lifestyle. Number 1, watch your weight. Extremely important. Many of the other things we talk about relate to this, but this is a goal in and of itself. Don't smoke. Already about 85% of us follow this. Don't start if you don't already smoke. We'll spend a show on smoking because despite the fact that less people smoke today than years ago, you can take a look at the Camel commercial for the doctors on my Facebook page. It's still a huge public health hazard for those who do. Wash your hands. Anybody knows anything about contagious diseases, flu season, when someone has a cold, the most important thing is to wash your hands. You got to keep your hands away from your face as well, but washing your hands is so important. When I was in private pediatric practice, I washed my hands before every patient out of respect to them. And I washed my hands after every patient out of respect to myself and my family. And I almost never caught anything from my patients unless it was something highly contagious and not spread by hand contact. Stay active. This may mean exercise to you, but it certainly means less sitting, less laying around, playing video games, looking at rectangles, watching the television. Podcasts are great because you could be out there doing something active. And you notice I said stay active. I'm not going to say exercise because exercise sounds icky to a lot of people. A whole generation of gym coaches ought to be flunked for what happened to the baby boomer generation. They made exercise something that we associated with unpleasantness. So I'm going to say stay active. Hugely important. Get a good night's sleep. Increasingly, the evidence is that sleep is tied with all these other things, with your weight, with stress, with heart disease, with inflammatory molecules that flood your body if you don't get enough sleep, inability to make good choices, whether it's at work or what you should eat for lunch. Sleep, hugely important. So far, the most popular episode we've done of Grumpy Old Doc is getting your child to sleep through the night. We will talk about getting you to sleep through the night as well. Obviously, you have a small child. You can't get to sleep if your kid isn't sleeping through the night. And the last of the big six, remember we've talked about watch your weight, stay active, don't smoke, wash your hands, get a good night's sleep. Those are 5. The 6th one is eat your fruits and vegetables. I remember I gave this exact same list to a fairly large group of people, and one person came up to me afterwards and said, well, I do one of those 6. And I said, do you smoke? And he said, no. I said, well, then remind me not to ever shake your hand when you come back from the bathroom. Now, these 6, I don't have the research to show you that you will live X number of years longer or have fewer doctor visits or avoid these diseases. But I am willing to bet you that if you ask any primary care doctor, what happens if somebody did all 6 of these behaviors, they'll tell you that about 4 out of 5, probably about 80% of the reasons people come to the doctor are related because they do not do all of these 6. Now, some folks have recognized the importance of a simple handful of lifestyle changes and focusing on them, and rather than a million other things, to improve our health. The state of Michigan is one of those. They have a 4x4 program where they're focusing on 2 sets of 4 items for their public health. But we don't like to change. That's the problem. If we don't do these things, it's difficult to change. Hand washing, we'll talk about that someday. I was deeply disturbed years ago to work with a doctor in an administrative capacity, and that doctor was previously a surgeon. And I never saw him wash his hands in the men's room. He would go right from the stall, out the door, never even approach the sink. It always bothered me a great deal. But it would be difficult for him to change. And I'm sure folks have said something to him. I even perhaps may have said something to him once. It's difficult to change. We're hardwired not to change from the days when our ancestors were reptiles and from the parts of our brains that we share with the reptiles. If you think about it for a second, folks, there is a distinct advantage evolutionarily to staying away from new stuff. New stuff might kill you. Old stuff that you've already done before obviously didn't kill you because you're still around. So do the old stuff again. They're fairly safe. It is hard to change our habits. Maybe we'll do a show sometime on some of the science of how we can change our habits. There are a number of best-selling books out there that talk about how to change your habits. But there's no doubt that you have to be willing to change your behavior. You have to be ready to change your behavior before you face the hardship of how do I change my behavior? How do I improve my ability to change? And we'll get to that. But eat your fruits and veggies. Really important. It's important that we emphasize this to our kids as well. It's important that we model this. Now, I'm not a food Nazi. I'm not going to talk to you about this nutrient being bad or this one necessarily being good, although I have a few things I think you should either increase or limit in your diet. But I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, even though I'm going to preach eating your fruits and vegetables, or a paleo diet. Let's go through some of those terms real quickly. First of all, a vegan. What does that mean? It means bad hunter in a lot of vegan is somebody that eats no animal products at all. So they wouldn't eat milk, even though you aren't killing the cow. They wouldn't eat eggs, even though it's not a viable mini chicken. Want to know more about vegans? Meet one. You will. Vegetarians. They're simply people that don't eat animals. They don't eat fish. They don't eat chicken. They will eat, generally, dairy products and eggs. Unfortunately, gelatin, is made from animals and it's not vegetarian. Who doesn't like Jell-O, folks? I guess they have some vegetarian substitutes. Is Jell-O healthy for you? Probably not. It's an incomplete protein with a lot of sugar and not much else. But you can make it healthier by putting loads of fruits in there, just not fresh pineapple because the Jell-O will never set. But getting back to the topic at hand, and then the other term that we run across all the time is paleo, the paleo diet. And so paleo is presumably the diet that our ancestors ate in Paleolithic times: whole grains, fruits, nuts, vegetables, meat. They stay away from dairy and more processed foods. Paleo diet sort of ignores a couple things. One is our digestive tract is not like Paleolithic humans. Humans are very adaptable to a wide variety of dietary sources. And even today, our guts are changing in response to fast processed foods. So human beings today are not the same kind of animals in terms of needing the same diet as Paleolithic humans are. The other thing that they neglect is Paleolithic humans probably ate anything that hadn't killed anybody that they knew previously. Many days their diet probably consisted of a few berries and a dead rat. But there's no question, even if you're not a food Nazi, we're not going to talk about food insensitivities or allergies or things like that in this episode. You, like many Americans, probably would benefit greatly from reducing the amount of fat in your diet, from reducing the amount of sugar in your diet. And an easy way to do that is to focus on fruits and vegetables. There's a few vegetables that have some fat in them, like avocados, but it's generally regarded to be a somewhat beneficial fat. And when it comes to sugar, a common misconception is that fruit has a lot of sugar in it, and so that it's bad for you. And it does have sugar in it. But that sugar is not concentrated the same way it is in a donut, for instance. So you could probably eat strawberries all day long, and I suspect you would not become obese. It's hard to get caloric-dense foods in fruits and vegetables, unless you mess them up. A potato is one of the healthiest things in the world, but slice it into tiny little strips and fry it in oil, and suddenly it's markedly less healthy. So a few tips about what you're eating. First of all, red meat, love the stuff, love a steak. But you can't eat that every day, and certainly things like hamburgers that are of more dubious origin and fried should certainly be stayed away from. So meat. Limiting the amount of red meat, limiting the amount of fried meat, limiting the fattiest meat. If you're going to eat meat, eat a cut you recognize, not something that's ground up from scraps or glued together. One of the most horrifying things I discovered years ago on the speaking circuit is that you often get a choice of beef or chicken. You get the beef, they call it a fillet. What it really is glued together scraps of other meat. Never order it rare in a hotel rubber chicken circuit, folks. Those seams can grow bacteria. So what do you want? You want real meat, a cut you can recognize. You want to have a hamburger? Buy your own meat and grind it, folks. What do you want to look for? Free-range meat. When you're looking at poultry, what do you want to do? You want to look at poultry that's been raised in an environment that's not a little coop the size of a shoebox. Those animals get all stressed and filled with drugs to keep them from getting sick so that they can make it to your table. And what happens when you eat them? When you eat the flesh of those animals, you get all those stress hormones, all those drugs into your own body. So limiting the amount of meat. Tomorrow is July 12th, National Hot Dog Day, and as we speak, I have some hot dogs on their way from Chicago, Illinois, so I can make them with the poppy seed buns and the sport peppers and the green relish, and I make from Dr. M meat sauce from Capital Lunch in New Britain, Connecticut. So we celebrate National Hot Dog Day, but hot dogs are not good for you. My son, when I told him we're celebrating National Hot Dog Day, says, is that followed by National Pancreatic Cancer Day? What he's referring to is that all cured meats do have a bad effect on the body. Pancreatic cancer, probably colon cancer as well. When I say cured meats, yep, I include hot dogs, kielbasa, bologna, bacon, ham. Those are cured meats. And when you go to the store, and the health food store, and you see the uncured bacon, go, oh, I've learned from listening to Grumpy Old Doc that cured bacon isn't so good for you. I'm going to get the uncured stuff. Be aware the way they treat the, quote, uncured, unquote, bacon in the store is with celery powder. Because in order to cure a smoked meat, you use nitrate. If you don't use that, you end up with something called botulism, which they discovered in smoked sausage in Germany was caused